Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lockcast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week we're going over UFC Vegas 16, headlined by Jack Hermansson and Marvin Vettori. This fight has been hit with some injuries, especially in the main event. You know, Jack Hermansson initially supposed to fight Darren Till. Darren Till drops out. In steps Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland drops out. In steps Marvin Vettori, which is a solid matchup for sure. I'm really looking forward to this one. Both guys deserve this spotlight, in my opinion. And yeah, a big one here would definitely set them up to really be in a title contention for the middleweight division. Other good spots on this card too. I'm really looking forward to this. Ilia Topuria versus Damon Jackson. That is a fucking fight. I cannot wait for that one. Movsar Evloev, you guys know I'm really high on that kid. He's coming in to fight the always entertaining Nate the Train Landwehr. Gabriel Benitez versus Justin Jaynes is a good fight. Jose Quinonez versus Louis Smolka. We were supposed to get that a couple weeks ago. Smolka pulls out due to a bad weight cut. Now here he is, hoping to make that weight once again. But that should be a good fight. Jamahal versus OSP is a great fight in my opinion too. Cody Durden versus Jimmy Flick. Holy crap, that's a good fight. I can't wait for that one too. Even De La Rosa versus Taila Santos. I think that's a great fight. And then we obviously have the ghost of Jay Collier fighting Gian Villante, but I definitely have some really good takes for that fight that I can't wait for you guys to hear once you guys get to that. But before we get to that, let's do the quick betting recap of the last event, which was UFC Vegas 15. Very, very light card for me, but we hit on both of the plays. So let's go with the dog of the night play first. I had one unit at plus 150 on Sumu Darji to win via KO. That comes to fruition within a minute. Goes out there and absolutely starches Malcolm Gordon. So that hits for plus 1.5 units. And then the lock of the night play was in the co-main event. We had 4 units on Miguel Baeza at minus 150. That hits for plus 2.67 units. He looked phenomenal in that fight. Not even 1 minute where I doubted that pick. There wasn't even one successful moment for Takashi Sato in that fight either. That's what a lock of the night play looks like. And shout out to everybody that hit that plus 900 sub prop that I was touting out there for you guys. Didn't make it an official pick, but it was definitely something that I was banging the drum on throughout fight week. So to shout out to anybody who hit that. Shout out to anybody that got it in the plus 1200 range too. Immense amount of value. I'm hoping that I can find something like that more often on these cards, but yeah, when something's not obvious but like pretty pressing like that, I'll do my best to bring it to your attention. All right, so we do end that event plus 4.17 units for an 83% ROI. Back on the winning track after 2 losing events, but this is what I'm about, dude. I know when I got my good reads, and I'm gonna hammer those things, and that's exactly what I did last week. I'm hoping to do the same this week. We got 3 events left in 2020. Hoping to end the year on a bang. On a 4 event winning streak would be great. Take a 3-week hiatus. Unwind and just get back to it. So I'm really very much looking forward to that. As always, gonna plug the Patreon for you guys. If you guys don't already know, the Patreon is $5 a month. You guys get all these breakdowns that you're about to see earlier than everybody else. You guys get all the free picks. You get all the picks as soon as I make them. You guys don't have to wait till Friday like the public does. And then even when I do go on my 3-event winning streak and I do charge the public, you guys get access to those bets as well, all for $5 a month. Or if you want to be a little bit more generous, there's a $10 a month tier, but there's nothing special on that except you being a little bit more of a generous individual. So shout out to anybody on the Patreon. And lastly, there's the best bets and props article that I drop every Friday as well too. That helps you guys and pinpoints the best bets and props for every single fight on that card. I'm looking to add a bunch more content on there. I'm getting closer and closer to leaving that goddamn 9 to 5. And once I do, I'm going to be putting a little bit more work into that Patreon to add some more content, add some more value there. But there's already a ton of value for $5 a month on that Patreon. So shout out to everybody on there. We're at 172 the last time I checked. Trying to crack that 200 mark before the end of the year. But yeah, you guys are absolutely killing it. And I'm beyond thankful for all the support that I got on there. But if you want to join the team, also last thing I'll talk about it, we have a great Discord group as well where we just talk the fights. During the fights, we try to spot live betting opportunities. We got a couple people on there on the community picks channel that are giving bets for football, Korean baseball, pretty much everything. We got a great community on there. and we would love to have you join that community as well. So that's another perk for the Patreon. The link for the Patreon is in the description below, so make sure you guys check that out. And help support your boy. I'm so close to making this dream become a reality in terms of doing this thing full time. And I have nobody but you guys to thank for the support and all the help as always. All right. That is about it. Also, last thing I do want to plug, Thursday nights, if you guys missed it last time, Thursday, me and Cody are doing a show on Odds HQ on their YouTube channel called Propping You Up, where we're giving you guys the best props for every single fight. And it's a show kind of in the works. Like we're working to continuously make it better. But that first show that we did, amazing turnout. I believe we had 35 live viewers. That's where we peaked at. But in total views, I think we hit the 4,000 mark, which is absolutely insane, especially for a pilot episode, especially for an episode that was on Thanksgiving for the U.S. people. So shout out to everybody that neglected their family that night to come join you guys over at Odds HQ. All right. And then obviously Friday, we have the final weigh-in stream at 9 p.m. Eastern that I'm always on. But you guys already know that. It's been a couple weeks now. You guys have come out pretty much every week, showed your boy love. So shout out to you guys for that. All right. Let's get into the breakdowns. That's what you guys are here for. And really looking forward to this card. Got a ton of great takes. Also, I do want to say one last thing. I do have my Lock of the Night play already placed. That's available on the Patreon. Hit the Patreon. You guys can get it there. Unless you guys want to wait till Friday when the line is probably going to be much, much worse, which I think it will be. So, yeah. All right, let's get into the breakdowns. Here we go. Luis Smolka versus Jose Quinonez. We got minus 140 on Smolka and plus 120 on El Teco. So let's start off with Luis Smolka, who is coming off a loss to Casey Kenny back in May. I believe that was the night I should have gone out there and picked Casey Kenny as my lock of the night play. However, I got a little bit too cute and tried to play something else. You know what? Just for the fun of this podcast, let's go back and see what I played as my lock of the night play for that card. Oh, yeah, it was the under 2.5 for Billy Quarantillo versus Spike Carlisle. Those guys went to war. Plenty of finishing opportunities, but nothing transpired. So we ended up getting an L there. But Casey Kenny went out there and did absolute work on Luis Smolka, who was a plus 225 underdog there. So I probably should have taken the juice at minus 285, knowing what Casey Kenny was capable of. I didn't waste too much time cashing on Casey Kenny afterwards against Ilia Tang. But again, this is about Luis Smolka, so let's get over to him. In that fight, I was kind of impressed with what we saw, but if you guys actually even go back to the Ryan McDonald fight, that's where you really start to see the evolution of Luis Smolka's game. In the Machnell and Sumadarji fights, you saw him kind of just trying to struggle to get the fight into the grappling realm, because we know how good his jiu-jitsu is and how crafty and successful he has been when he does implement his jiu-jitsu. Obviously, we did see him get submitted by Machnell, so maybe that one made him go out there and kind of change up his plan and start to approach fights differently. And the Casey Kenny fight wasn't going too bad for him. It was just a big shot from Casey Kenny with the counter to really rock Luis Smolka there and allowed him to, get that position for the one-arm guillotine choke. And there wasn't much Luis Smolka could do in that situation after getting rocked. But leading up to that, like I said, he looked really good. He landed like 25 plus body shots within 2.5 minutes or 2 minutes of that fight with Kenny. Like, it was very, very impressive. And then the Ryan McDonald fight, we saw him just absolutely battering the body of Ryan McDonald. Not really even paying too much attention to the head, just waiting for the opportunity to switch from the body shots to the head shots. I like to compare it to like when I want to be really cheap on UFC 3 or UFC 4, whatever it is. Just keep going to the body, because more often than not, people just strictly block to the head. They think that it's more damaging to get hit to the head than it is to the body. But you just rip the body, and wait for the hands to come down and then start bringing those shots up top. And I love that style from Smolka. Like, if he's able to go out there and implement that and then force opponents to go out there and shoot on him, maybe he could counter with a perfectly timed guillotine or or sprawling on these guys and trying to reverse them when they try to initiate the grappling exchanges. Quinonez, we know what his style is with jiu-jitsu tattooed across his chest, but I haven't been overly impressed with his jiu-jitsu game from what I've seen. His only win out of his last 3 was against a guy named Carlos Huachin in a fight where Huachin just seemed like a guy that was content with just being the slow, plodding guy moving forward, looking for the big shots, whereas Quinonez seemed a little bit more comfortable on the feet, a lot of movement, a lot of in and out movement, a lot of kicks as well too, and also the size and reach disadvantage that Carlos Huachin was in. It was a lot for him to overcome there. Alberto Quinonez did a phenomenal job in terms of sticking and moving and getting out of the way of the big shots, and there wasn't really any point in that fight where he was really hurt or in trouble. He even hurt and dropped Carlos Huachin in that first round, and then in the next 2 rounds he kind of just cruises. I kind of understand why he decided to go that realm or that way, just due to the amount of power that Huachin had in his hands. But against Nathaniel Wood and Sean O'Malley, who came with a little bit more of a diverse attack in the striking realm, it kind of like stumbled and completely baffled what Quinonez was able to do. He seemed like he was more caught up in seeing what his opponent was doing rather than implementing his own game, just like he did in the Carlos Huachin fight. I expect him to maybe dwindle a little bit toward against Louis Smolka here in terms of what Smolka is going to be bringing with the hands and the redefined game that we're seeing from Smolka on the feet. And then when it gets to the ground, I kind of lean Louis Smolka. Like, as much as people want to big up Jose Quinonez's jiu-jitsu game just because he has a tattooed across his chest, doesn't mean the guy's immune to getting choked out. Like, he got choked out against Nathaniel Wood. He was getting close to getting choked out in plenty of other fights too. I'm not completely sold on Quinonez here. I think Louis Smolka is definitely the spot. At minus 140, though, I'm not 100% sure if I'd want to go out there and put money on Smolka. He did open up at a minus 175, and a ton of money has come in on Quinonez to kind of get that line to shrink. But if it continues to shrink, like if you give me minus 110, like a pick'em line here, I might have to put a little bit on Louis Smolka. Like, again, I'm liking what I'm seeing from him, his developments, especially in the striking game, and then just that style of just beating up the body, not really giving too much worries about the face, and then waiting for the face to open up to really rip those shots up there and take advantage. And I feel like Quinonez is a guy that can kind of get lulled into that game. Smolka isn't as slow and plodding as a Huachin, so he does move a little bit more. He does push the pressure, and I feel like he'll do a good job of kind of like corralling Quinonez against the cage or into those corners and ripping shots to the body, and then eventually switching it up and going to the head. So I like Smolka here. I think he can get it done. But am I going to go out there and pay minus 140 on Smolka? Probably not. Give me a pick'em line or give me minus 115, minus 120 or something, and I'd be a little bit more intrigued. But there's so much else on this card that I'm intrigued by that I don't know if I'm even going to bother risking the money on Smolka. But he should definitely win this fight, especially with this newer version that we've been seeing of him. So I'm going to go out there and pick Louis Smolka. I wouldn't even be surprised if he gets a finish too, maybe second round, third round submission, or even KO or a club and sub. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I wouldn't mind seeing what the inside the distance line for Louis Smolka looks like here. If we can get better than like plus 200 or something, that's probably worth the play in itself. But I do like Louis Smolka to win this fight. I'll say first or second round club and sub, or even just submission straight out. So final prediction, Louis Smolka via finish in the first or second round. Gabriel Benitez versus Justin Jaynes. We got minus 185 for Gabriel, and we got plus 160 on Jaynes. Let's start off with the Qatari hero, Justin Jaynes. So I did cash on him against him last time around when he fought Gavin Tucker back in August. And that was a relatively quick turnaround for him after making his UFC debut after knocking out Frank Camacho within 41 seconds. And outside of a first round knockout, I don't really know what he brings to the table. He seems to be a generic power puncher that likes to throw winging shots and not much else. Gas tank is a little bit suspect too, but I kind of chalk it up to him trying to finish Gavin Tucker in that first round after dropping him with a beautiful uppercut. It did drop him. It did follow up with a couple shots, and Tucker did a good job of kind of stifling the the damage that was coming his way. However, Tucker managed to survive that, and then in the second round, really start to take over, really start to dig his kicks into the body of Justin Jaynes, and really start to suck the wind and the cardio out of Jaynes. So it's a combination of, I think, a suspect gas tank from Justin Jaynes, as well as the body work from Gavin Tucker, which eventually led to him rocking him in that second round and in the third round, and then following up with the beautiful rear naked choke. Beautiful win for Gavin Tucker there. I won't lie, had me sweating a little bit because the worst case scenario did come to fruition in terms of Justin Jaynes knocking down Gavin Tucker in that first round. However, we saw the resiliency of Tucker to fight through that, pretty much throw up a submission attempt right after getting dropped. So we saw that he was still somewhat in it. But that's pretty much Justin Jaynes' game, in my opinion. Like, I don't really see much else that he brings to the table. Once he fights a guy that has, a much more technical game and more than just punches, I think he falls into trouble. And this is a perfect matchup for Gabriel Benitez to get back onto the winning track here. So last time he hit around, he took not a short notice fight, but a fight up at lightweight against Omar Morales, where he ate the biggest shots from Morales and was still sticking around, landing his own good shots and landing massive leg kicks in that fight too. That seems to be something very, very important in Benitez's game, is establishing that leg kick. And he fights from a southpaw stance, so he's digging into the inner thigh of the lead leg of his opponents more often than not. I like what we see from Gabriel Benitez, and it's weird to me to think that the guy's only 32 years old, considering that he's been in the UFC since Tough Latin America 1, which was way back in 2014. He didn't end up winning that show, but he did make it into the big stage, and since then, he's put up a 5-4 record within the UFC. His losses: Andre Fili, Enrique Barzola, Sodiq Yusuff, and Omar Morales. So not really the worst losses in the world there. And the fact that he was able to go out there and sling leather for 3 rounds with a guy a weight class higher and throws with a hell of, very, very bad intentions like Omar Morales gives me really good feelings going into this fight against Justin Jaynes. Obviously, the fight before that, he got knocked out by Sodiq Yusuff, who in my opinion is a much more technical striker and was waiting for the perfect opportunity to counter Gabriel Benitez and land a perfect bomb of his own, following up with some ground and pound of his own. However, I think the very limited path to victory for Justin Jaynes here makes this a really good spot for Gabriel Benitez. I think him chewing up the lead leg of Justin Jaynes and even bringing that leg not just to the thigh, but to the calf and also to the body as well of Justin Jaynes. I think if he works on that, sticks on the outside as much as possible, tries to do his best to avoid the big shots of Justin Jaynes, I think he'll have a really good shot of outpointing and possibly finishing Jaynes late. I think this is a solid spot for another potential third round finish prop, something that I like to hit quite often. And I think this is a perfect spot given the questionable cardio of Justin Jaynes. Now, a lot of people want to say that Justin Jaynes has the path to victory of taking this fight to the ground. However, I think he's going to gas himself out too much if he goes out there and tries to do that round after round. I believe by round and a half in, we'll see the speed and the cardio advantage of Gabriel Benitez really start to take over. And I think he's a really good spot here. Like, I really like him in this spot. In terms of metrics, we're talking 5'7", 67.5-inch reach for Justin Jaynes, and we got a 5'8", 71-inch reach for Gabriel Benitez. So a slight reach advantage, a 1-inch height advantage for Benitez, and a much more technical and slicker striker, at least in my opinion, for Gabriel Benitez here. So I love him in this spot. I think when you have guys that have such narrow paths of victory like Justin Jaynes, the other spot is almost an auto bet. We did see the line open in Justin Jaynes' favor, which was absolute insanity. -155 is what the line opened up for Justin Jaynes. And then we've seen steady buyback now, and Gabriel Benitez all the way up to -185. I wish I did tape this a little bit sooner so I could get that better line. However, I could even price Benitez all the way up to -250 in this spot. I give him a 75% chance of winning, which even says -300. But I'm hoping that people will buy into the knockout power of Justin Jaynes and see, okay, we saw Benitez knocked out only 2 fights ago, but what they're overlooking is, Sodiq Yusuff, much, much more technical striker than Justin Jaynes, and will do a better, or won't do as good of a job as Sodiq did to find that opening. So I like Benitez here. I think he's a really good spot, a really confident spot on my end. And I'll be looking to play him very, very shortly. So, yeah, I do like Gabriel Benitez to win this fight, probably by third round TKO. I think his leg kicks are going to add up, which really start to slow down Jaynes. And then we see him follow up with some punches and get that finish in the third round. So, once again, I'm going with Gabriel Benitez to win this fight via KO in the third round. Ilia Topuria versus Damon Jackson. We got minus 230 on the Spaniard slash Georgian Ilia Topuria and plus 190 on Damon Jackson, Damon the Leech Jackson, I believe it is. And the over-unders just recently dropped, so we currently got it pretty much at a pick'em line. Slight, minus money, underdog money, I should say, on the under 2.5 here. But man, this fight is easily the one that I'm looking forward to the most. Like, the fighter I'm looking forward to the most on this card is Movsar Evloev. A lot of people know that I'm very, very high on that kid, hence his minus 500 line that he has. But in terms of a fight and how guys match up, this fight is by far taking the cake for me in terms of just knowing that it's going to be action packed from bell to bell. So let's start off with Damon Jackson, who came out super short notice. Save Sayoud did not mince his words at all after Damon Jackson was able to get that guillotine choke, but you hear him yell out immediately, 3 days notice, 3 days notice. And he made it known. He had a very tough first 2 rounds. Mirsad Bektik was pretty much getting the better of him, winning the scrambles, having a bunch of submission attempts, but never really locking anything up to the best of his ability. Then Damon Jackson, finishes the second round strong, landing a couple big elbows. And then in that third round, you could definitely tell that the cardio was catching up to Mirsad Bektic. And you can definitely see it in his corner too, when Faraz Zahabi's just like, dude, slow it the fuck down. There's no rush here. We got 5 minutes left. Slow down the pace, and maybe 1 or 2 takedowns will win this fight. Unfortunately for him, when he goes for the takedown, Damon Jackson locks up a sub, or a guillotine choke specifically, I should say. And you hear Saif Sahoud in the background as well saying, don't go for it unless you unless you 100% have it. And not only did he have it, he used that position to reverse it, end up on top of Bektic and just squeezes the hell out of that choke. Eventually gets to the finish there, 1 minute and 21 seconds into that third round, and that cashed huge for me too. If a lot of people were with me at that time, you guys know I cashed him as the underdog in that, a heavy underdog in that fight, and also the submission prop and the round 3 prop. Bang on read on my end, and I was very, very happy about that. Now here, he matches up against, in my opinion, a much tougher opponent in Ilia Topuria. We know what Jackson's game is. He wants to go out there and wants to get submission choke. He wants to get a finish ASAP. In terms of victories, he has 14 submission victories out of his 18 total victories. So he has only 4 other wins have come by anything other than a submission. Insane for this guy. He is all action pretty much all the time. Kind of surprised that the under 2.5 is where it is, but once the limits open up, we'll see where that line lays and if there's any value left on it once that line starts to settle out. But at the pick'em line, that line is absolutely absurd. I think people should be jumping on that, but we'll see what the public does to that line as the fight week goes on. Decent takedowns, but he can be controlled. That's the issue here with Jackson, and I feel like Topuria could have success in actually controlling him. Decent striking, but he definitely makes the most of his bread off of his submission game and getting guys to the ground and reversals and sweeps and all that type of stuff. He's very, very fun to watch for sure. Now, Topuria, on the other hand, this is a guy that I've been high on for a long time. This going back to his fight against Brian Bouland, June of 2018. That's a fight that was one of the only Cage Warriors fights where I actually ended up taping that. And luckily for me, I did end up, getting on the Topuria train. He closed as a bit of a favorite in that fight. I do want to see if I can pull that line up if Best Fight Odds has it for us. Yeah, he opened as a plus 100 underdog and actually closed at plus 141. I don't remember the line that I got him at, but I do remember I did get him at plus money there, and I was more than happy about that. I mean, the only issue or the only question marks that we had going into that Boulan fight was questionable competition leading into that outside of the one fight that he had in Cage where he got a mounted guillotine 3 minutes into that first round. But makes short work of Brian Boulan, goes out there and gets an anaconda choke less than 2 minutes into that first round, and he really burst onto the scene there. Unfortunately, he hasn't been that active, like between his UFC debut, which was October 10th of this year, and the fight before that was November of 2019, the year before. So, it's good that he's getting his dues in now. Like this is only over 2 months after his Yusuf Zalal fight. I'm assuming this was way more of a complete camp than his Zalal fight, considering that he took that Zalal fight on relatively short notice. Now he has maybe not 3 months, which is what normal fighters would like, but that fight was announced pretty quickly after both guys got their hand raised. Damon Jackson won in September. Topuria won in October. So yeah, they have a little bit more time to prepare for this. So I want to cut Topuria a little bit of slack in terms of the questionable cardio that we saw in that third round. We've seen from Damon Jackson. We know that Mirsad Bektik has a questionable gas tank, and we saw him take advantage of that. Now, does Topuria's gas tank wane in this third round as well? I'm expecting this fight to be just as high paced as the Yusuf Zalal fight. So if he does have cardio issues, and this fight does reach the third round, I believe we'll actually find out, how good his cardio is. And Damon Jackson is the guy to find that out against. It's going to be a high paced fight, there's going to be a bunch of scrambles, there's going to be a bunch of reversals. Both guys are going to be going for submission attempts. Both guys are going to be squeezing. So we'll find out how much Topuria really has in that 11th to 15th minute if we do see those. Personally, I don't think we end up seeing those. Personally, I do think that we see Topuria land the takedowns, and I think he has the more superior jiu-jitsu game here. We did see Mirsad Bektic have a bunch of submission attempts on Damon Jackson, but just wasn't able to complete any of them. With Topuria, I feel like he may be able to complete them against Jackson here. Again, I'll give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt in his fight against Zalal since it was short notice, but we still saw, a high level jiu-jitsu game from him. And I feel like he could complete one of those submissions against Jackson. Now, Jackson hasn't been finished via a submission since his Hani Jason fight, which was a long time ago. I believe Hani Jason actually tested positive after that, but that was May of 2015. So it's closing in on 5.5 years since we've seen Damon Jackson actually submitted. But I think this is the first time we're seeing him fight somebody with the level of jiu-jitsu of Ilia Topuria. So that's where things get a little bit hairy for Jackson. Going into the research for this fight, I actually thought that there was going to be some value on Jackson, and I still believe that there is some slight value here on Jackson if that's the way you want to go, but I think you would be better off with going with Jackson via sub as a good hedge here, or even Jackson in round 3 if Topuria really does have cardio issues. However, for me, I think the line that I'm most interested in is the under 2.5. I don't really want to take my chances on betting Topuria here. He should win. I think he snatches up a sub, whether it's in the first or second round. But Damon Jackson could be a sneaky good play for anybody that's looking for an underdog here. Especially if this fight does get extended into that third round, we could definitely see Jackson capitalize on the questionable gas tank of Topuria. I'm not saying that Topuria is a fish out of water in that third round. Like, we did see him still have success against Zalal, and we did, I believe, see him finish the fight in full mount, or at least on top of Zalal, to show that he actually has that will and that perseverance. But I don't think that Zalal has that third round killer instinct like our guy Damon Jackson, who's always just fishing for a submission of some sort. So, man, this fight is just so entertaining, so interesting to break down and get into. But I think the ultimate prediction that I'm going to make here is Ilia Topuria to win this either in the first or second round via either ground and pound or submission. But the play that I like the most is the under 2.5 in case Topuria isn't able to get that finish and maybe Jackson ends up getting it. So I like the under 2.5 here, but my prediction is going to be Ilia Topuria either first or second round sub. Cody Durden versus Jimmy Flick. We got minus 165 on the Brick Flick, and we got plus 145 on Cody Durden. Now, this is a very, very fun fight too. It was fun to break down first and foremost, but it's also very fun in terms of what these guys could potentially bring to this fight. So minus 265 is what the line is for this fight to not go to decision, and it absolutely makes sense. Let's start off with Cody Durden, who's already had one fight in the UFC. He's gone to a draw pretty much with Chris Gutierrez. I believe he had a 10-8 first round where he pretty much got Gutierrez down within 30 seconds, I believe, and then just rode out the entire fight. Or that entire round, looking for submissions, landing some good ground and pound, but just wasn't able to get the finish there. Chris Gutierrez did a good job in the last 2 rounds to go out there, keep this fight on the feet, albeit did get taken down in the last 45 seconds of the second round. But outside of that, he did a good job of keeping it on the feet and kind of just picking apart Cody Durden from on top. And most people expected that to happen if this fight did stay on the feet. However, I think there was a ton of value on Cody Durden at those crazy odds. I believe he was roughly around plus 230, plus 250 for that fight. Regardless, everybody's bets gets voided as this fight ends up going to a draw. That's pretty much his style. He likes to get the fight to the ground. You know what I mean? He has the USA wrestling tattoo over his left shoulder, and that usually means, you know what I mean, the guy has a pretty good wrestling background, and you got to say the same thing for Cody Durden here. Striking looks like it could use a little bit of work, but he does definitely have power in his hands. Likes to move forward pretty much at all times, but it's obvious that his game plan is more often than not to get the fight to the ground. He has good submissions. He has a ton of submission victories and a bunch of ground and pound victories as well too. He even has a slam victory on his record, but then again, he was fighting a guy that was 0-1 that night. I like what I see from the kid. I think he has a good amount of potential. He's 29 years old, so he really has to start to get it going in terms of like making a move towards the top. Obviously, he hasn't been defeated since what was that, March of 2018. So he's currently on a, what is that, 2, 4, 6, 7 fight winning streak, or at least 8 fight unbeaten streak if you want to take this draw into consideration. But this is a tough fight in terms of being able to implement his game without putting himself into danger. Now, I like to refer to these fights as like the Ben Askren and Damian Maia fight, or at least that's the type of template we have for this fight. We have a strong wrestler going up against a guy that has a very diverse set of skills when we talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, all you need to see is Jimmy Flick's last fight against Nate Smith, which was on the Contender Series, to know that this guy loves hunting for the choke, and that's more often than not how he gets his fights done. He has a ton of victories by submission. Let me get you the actual number there. He has 13 victories by submission out of his 15 fights. The other 2 went to a decision. Hasn't notched a knockout finish or a ground and pound finish. The guy's always hunting for the sub. He does look slightly uncomfortable on the feet when the fight does, take place on the feet. He did end up losing via punches to Chris Gutierrez as well as Ray Rodriguez, who are both in the UFC. But he's still able to go out there and like submit guys. Last 3 fights, all submission victories. I like his style in terms of, attacking submissions as often as he is. Now, the question here is, does Cody Durden have a good enough submission defense to not get tapped here? He has gotten rear naked choked by Ryan Hollis way back in 2018, but no one has really been close up until that point, or since then, I should say. I wouldn't even be entirely surprised if this fight ends up taking place on the feet for the most part. And I feel like I would have to trust Durden a little bit more on the feet. But I don't know. I don't know what it is about Flick. Like, he has this way of always initiating the grappling exchanges, whether it's one way or another. This is a very tough fight. I'm definitely going to be passing it. The only thing I would recommend, if anybody wants to take a play on this fight, and I know it's a little bit juicy, but that fight doesn't go to decision at minus 265, is very, very intriguing. But this is a very, very tough fight to call. I'm gonna go with Flick here, though. I feel like he will be able to initiate the grappling in some way or another. Cody Durden obviously should have good takedown defense, being from like a wrestling background. But all it takes from Jimmy Flick is a trip or even hopping on an opponent's back or something like that, and this guy can definitely get his jiu-jitsu game going. Again, the longer this fight stays on the feet, the more I'd be questioning the Jimmy Flick's ability to win this fight. However, I just expect with his pressure and the way that he fights, almost like I don't want to compare it to Tony Ferguson too much, as I don't want to spear in the face of Tony Ferguson, but I think that Flick has some potential to definitely go out there and get some victories. He's 30 years old. 15-5 record on a 3-fight winning streak. Fuck, man. This is a very, very tough fight. It's definitely a tough toss up for me. Shout out to anybody that managed to get in on Cody Durden at that plus 170-ish line. He even got up to plus 185 at a certain point. But people are understanding the love on Cody Durden. I get it too. I just don't feel comfortable betting on him in this spot. So I'll go with Jimmy Flick to win this fight by submission. I think he eventually locks up something on Cody. But it's a very, very tough fight. Very, very entertaining fight. I do think that we'll see a lot of scrambles. We'll see some good exchanges on the feet too. But for the fans' perspective, I do hope we see Cody Durden seek the takedowns just as he normally does. Unfortunately for him, that kind of puts himself into more danger. So I'm really interested to see how he approaches this. If he does go the grappling route, how good his submission defense is, and if he's going to be able to keep Jimmy Flick, off of him in terms of submission attempts for 15 minutes, or even however long it takes him to potentially finish Jimmy as well too. So once again, I'll go with Jimmy Flick to win by submission, but very, very sketchy fight here. Jordan Leavitt versus Matt Wiman. We got minus 390 on the Contender Series alum Jordan Leavitt and plus 320 on the UFC vet Matt Wiman. Let's start off with Matt Wiman, who took roughly a 5-year hiatus before coming back to the UFC last June, where he lost via ground and pound to an up-and-comer Luis Pena. And then in his next fight, another up-and-comer in December of 2019, so just about a year ago, lost via decision to Joe Solecki. Now here he is once again fighting another up-and-comer in Jordan Leavitt, who in my opinion isn't as good as the prior two fighters, but should still have the tools to be able to go out there and beat a guy like Matt Wiman, who's 37 years old. Not surprised. I can definitely see that. But it's tough to really back Matt Wiman nowadays. His takedown defense just doesn't seem that good. You got to give it to him for being able to kind of withstand what Joe Solecki was throwing at him. I know a lot of people had a lot of money on Joe Solecki to win inside the distance that night, but unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to get the finish. However, Solecki did still get some heavy scorecards in his favor. Now, Jordan Leavitt has some red flags for me. You know what I mean? Even though he's 7-0 here, his fight from back in February is very, very alarming. His striking does not look good. Like, the guy just doesn't seem to have the proper mechanics to throw a strike. His jabs just don't look good. He throws pretty much just one shot every now and then, but it's pretty obvious that his game plan is to get the fight to the ground ASAP, no matter how unorthodox it is to get the fight there. Whether it's him scooting on his butt or him just like flailing for a takedown, he's looking to get it. And luckily for him, it seems like Matt Wiman would be able to succumb to those types of takedowns. Now, the question really is, if Jordan Leavitt's not able to secure a submission here against Wiman, Wiman could absolutely spend some time on top, land some good shots from on top, and kind of sway judges his way. Because Jordan Leavitt is kind of like a Jillian Robertson in the fact that they go for submissions over position. They don't mind if they end up on their back in hopes of searching and hunting for a submission. So that's a little bit of a red flag for me. Not really a huge red flag, but if once he starts fighting a fighter that's able to withstand the submission attack of Jordan Leavitt, he's going to deal, with some pretty heavy strikes from on top, and that's very, very concerning. Once he fights guys that are, that can withstand that type of jiu-jitsu attack, and do their own damage from on top, this kid's in a world of trouble. Luckily for him, Matt Wiman's not that guy. I don't think that Matt Wiman will be able to survive the submission onslaught here from Jordan Leavitt, because Jordan Leavitt, say what you want about him, and as much as I've kind of given him shit here, he does a good job with reversals, does a good job with throwing up submissions, and does a good job with just staying active in the jiu-jitsu realm. With that said, I'm not comfortable parlaying him in that minus 350, minus 400 range. I think a lot of people are just fading Matt Wiman here, and I kind of understand that, but I need a better price tag, especially for like a UFC a newcomer, somebody that has shown weaknesses in their game. Even though he's undefeated, there's definitely weaknesses in his game, especially when the fight is on the feet. But again, from what we've seen recently from Matt Wiman, it seems like an easy fight for Leavitt to get this fight to the ground and pull off the submission. And that's kind of the way that I'm leaning here. I think he does secure a submission in that first or second round, but definitely a guy I'd be looking to, fade next time around. So hopefully he goes out there and gets a kind of a highlight reel submission over Matt Wiman, so he's a little bit overvalued next time around. But this is a guy I'm definitely looking to fade next time. But this fight's an all-in-all pass for me. But in terms of an actual prediction, I'll go with Jordan Leavitt to win this fight via submission in the first or second round. Gian Villante versus Jake Collier, and we got minus 220 on Gian Villante and plus 180 on Jake Collier. Fight doesn't go to decision is minus 230. That obviously makes sense, but fuck, I don't know which way to start here. Let's start off with Gian Villante, 17-12. What is he? Man, his last little stretch. So he beat Saperbeg Safarov in December of 2016, and since then he is 2-5. Sorry, he had a draw in a grappling competition against Chris Camozzi back in June of 2019. But he's coming off a modified choke from the bottom, according to Tapology, to Maurice Green. It looked like his sad attempt at an Ezekiel choke, but it was so weird because it was like from bottom, from half guard, and he just put up a kind of choke type of position against Gian Villante, and I think it was literally the exhaustion that Gian Villante ended up tapping to. We saw him absolutely gassed going into that second round, even more gas going into the third round. However, he was successful in landing on Maurice Green, dropping him, trying to finish him in that last little flurry that he had on the ground. However, Maurice Green does enough to keep moving, avoid the big shots to get taken out of there, and then he locks up this choke, and you see Gian Villante to tap there. And if you guys have been watching me for a while, you guys know that I'm not the biggest fan of Gian Villante, or I'm sure he's great as a person and all that, but I just mean in terms of his fighting style and how uncoachable he is. I love shouting out Keith Trimble because that guy looks like an amazing coach, like he just means nothing but the best. But every time he's in Gian Villante's corner, it looks like he's going to be, losing years off of his life, just because he's just popping every brain cell in his forehead, trying to get through to Gian Villante. And you'd think after cornering him as long as he has, he knows that Gian Villante is just not going to listen to him. It's just hilarious. Like, he's throwing them, going into that third round, he's like, all right, we need volume here. Let's pitter patter him. Let's try to, accumulate output and try to score this round in our favor. What does fucking Gian Villante do? Go out there and throw bungalows. And even after the first couple of bungalows that he throws, you hear Keith in the background just pleading, Gian, relax, calm down, slow it down. And Gian's like, fuck it, I'm going to try to take out Maurice Green. God damn, it's probably the funniest part of just taping Gian Villante fights is seeing Keith Trimble just lose his shit. But we know what Gian's about, and now it's pretty clear that he just does not give a fuck about his fighting career. Put on the massive amount of weight that he was actually supposed to fight Ben Rothwell at heavyweight back in April when COVID initially hit. Then he gets another 2.5 months to prepare for Maurice Green and still comes in absolute dog shit shape. His cardio did not look on point. His punches seem slow. The guy has a background in wrestling and just refuses to use it. I think he's too far gone from his wrestling days at this point to truly use it to a full effect. So I'm not really banking on him to go out there and out-wrestle Jake Collier here. Now, on the opposite side, we got Jake Collier, who used to fight at 185 pounds, even 205. He's slowly been getting higher and higher in his weight classes. Was it 185? Yeah, he was fighting at 185. Even his first UFC fight, 185 pounds. But now he's at 205. He had taken off about 3 years, close to 3 years, between the Marcel Fortuna fight, which he won by decision, and his return against Tom Aspinall, where he got crushed in 45 seconds. Now, there's not too much to take from that 45 seconds that we do have of Jake Collier here at heavyweight, but it's obviously concerning that he came in at that 265 limit. A lot of people thought he'd probably come in around that 240 limit, but once we saw him at the weigh-ins and not even want to take his shirt off, you kind of suspected that he probably didn't come in the best shape. I feel like he's the type of guy that would take the kind of criticism that was thrown at him, going into that fight and kind of come back with a little bit of fire. Now, we might see him at a little bit better weight. I'm hoping that we see him at maybe even 250 would be nice. You know what I mean? Not the heavyweight limit. Don't make me think that you had to cut weight to make that heavyweight limit after you used to make 185 pounds back in the day. And a lot of people, they're counting Jake Collier out, especially after getting crushed in 45 seconds against Tom Aspinall. Now, I'm hoping that, the little that we did see from Jake in that fight from Tom, I wasn't super let down. I wasn't super unimpressed with Jake. You know what I mean? The fact that he could still get his leg up there and throw a head kick, even though it didn't even land, but the fact that he was able to throw out there was impressive on my end. I was expecting to see a much slower and completely just dull Jake Collier. And I wasn't overly, we still saw him throwing in combinations, throwing leg kicks, and that was somewhat impressive from the little bit we saw of him. Now we need to be able to differentiate Tom Aspinall and Gian Villante. I think a lot of people are baking the Tom Aspinall fight is heavily baked into this fight against Gian Villante because, look, we saw Gian Villante go 3 rounds against Maurice Greene, and yeah, he tapped to exhaustion in that 3rd round. But Jake Collier, he got knocked out in 45 seconds. Tom Aspinall is not Gian Villante. They're on completely two different complete trajectories at this point in their careers. Tom Aspinall, kind of light on his feet, throws some good hands, throws those hands with speed. Gian Villante does not throw his hands with speed. He telegraphs his shots. He throws, he wings his shots. He's not as crisp as Tom Aspinall on the feet. So we need to clear that out first and foremost. This is not going to be Gian Villante going in there and just cracking Jake Collier once and Collier falling. I think people are truly overlooking the durability of Jake Collier just because of that last fight. And I think he still has some durability left in him. Like, I still think he'd be able to take those early shots from Gian Villante. And if this fight does go later, I kind of trust Collier to have slightly better cardio than what we've seen from Gian Villante in the past. We still see Collier, like I said, we saw him throwing in combinations. He's not just going out there trying to look for that one-hitter quitter. You know what I mean? That's what Gian Villante does. So I like Jake Collier here. Call me crazy, but I would rather pay the plus 180, possibly even plus 200 that I think that we're going to get on Collier. Once we get closer into the fight week and closer to the fight, I think more people are going to go out there and fade Collier. So I'm more than happy to pull the trigger at plus 200. If I see plus 200 at any point, I'm going to pull that trigger on Jake Collier, and I don't care what anybody says. If you're giving me Jake Collier to fade Gian Villante, and even in Gian Villante in this type of shape, I'm fucking taking that every single day. I don't give a shit. And even let's put it this way: even when both fighters were in their peak conditioning, and when Jake Collier was at 185 pounds and Gian Villante was fighting at 205, both of them on their best days, I'm still taking Jake Collier. He shows a much better overall game. He shows good top control as well too. So even if he goes out there and takes Gian Villante down, I could see him controlling Villante from on top. That's not out of the realm of possibility. Why this line is as wide as it is, beyond me. Like, when this fight got announced, I'm like, it's going to be a pass. This will probably be a pick'em anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how people can have utmost confidence on either side here. However, this line, for some goddamn reason, continues to trend in Gian Villante's way. Goddamn, it even opened up at minus 240 for Gian Villante, which is absolutely hilarious and a half. Good Lord. Jake Collier was plus 190 for a little bit. But yeah, I think we're still going to see plus 200 on Jake Collier, and I'm going to be all over that. Again, talk all the shit you guys want in the comments. I don't care. This fight is much closer to a 50-50 than minus 220 for Gian Villante. Absolutely absurd. Absurd. I still think that Jake Collier could give us a solid performance. I'm kind of hoping that he comes in at that 250-ish at worst range. And again, even if he comes in at 265, I still think he could put up way better of a fight than a plus 180 or a plus 200 would indicate. So I'm going with Collier here. I think he either gets it done late or he wins a decision, but I'm liking Collier. Give me that money all day. Gian Villante is not trustworthy north of this price. If you got him in the minus 110, minus 150, not even minus 150, like, this should truly be a pick'em fight. Truly. God damn. I got to stop this breakdown because it's just so crazy to me that people are betting him this high. But I got Jay Collier. More than likely will be my dog of the night play for this card. And, I'm recording this literally a week before the fight. So knock on wood that nothing happens with the fights. Nobody gets canceled or gets COVID. But I like Collier here. I think he's going to be massive value at this dog price. So I'm going with Jay Collier to win this fight. Again, late stoppage or a decision victory. Movsar Evloev versus Nate Landwehr. We got minus 550 on one of my top prospects, Movsar Evloev, and plus 425 on Nate the Train Landwehr. So let's start off with Movsar. You guys been watching me for a while. You guys know that I'm high on Movsar. I even had him as my lock of the night play last time around against Mike Grundy, and that seemed to be the public's favorite dog that night. And I stayed steady on that play, and it paid off for me. I mean, hairy first round. We did see Mike Grundy lock up a pretty tight Darce choke. Luckily for Movsar, he was able to scramble and get out, and he started to put his hands together. So there was an argument that he possibly won round one there by really busting up Mike Grundy with his punches. His boxing looked great. His Muay Thai looked great, and it really shows that his time over at Tiger Muay Thai is definitely paying off for him. So that's very positive to see. But he's also now spending time down at ATT, which should help him give even more looks or get more looks, which is really great for his progression as a young fighter. He's only 26 years old. He's 26. He'll be 27 in February, but he's come a long way. He was an M1 champion, bantamweight champion to be specific. And it's funny because him and Nate Landwehr were champions at the same time. Just Nate at 145, Evloev at 135, and now since Evloev's come over to the UFC, he's decided to just stick at 145 pounds, and he looks great there. Doesn't have to cut the extra bit of weight. His cardio looks amazing too, which is great. Cardio for days. He's been to the five rounds a couple times in his career, the cardio is something that I don't really worry too much about when we're talking about Movsar. Now I'm liking the progression that we're seeing with his boxing and his striking, as I believe in his M1 days that was his weaker, one of the weaker traits that he had. In his M1 days, like I said, he really did focus on the grappling, the scrambles, the wrestling, and he did a really good job kind of just staying a step ahead of most of his opponents. We're kind of seeing it in the UFC. He had a tough go against Enrique Barzola, but was still able to pull out the victory there. Mike Grundy, that was pretty much him getting it done via his hands and his striking. So that looked really great. But with Nate Landwehr, on the other hand, he's a guy that I'm like super excited about to always watch. The guy's must see TV pretty much every single time. He was that one champion, like I mentioned as well, and he had to deal with a lot of grappling. Luckily for him, he was pretty good at getting back to his feet. However, his opponents did spend some solid time on top, so he did have that. He was usually fighting back. Trying to get a finish to usually get his victories, and that's what he did in the M1 scene. Now, we did see him put out recently against Herbert Burns back in January. Beautiful knee from the clinch from Herbert Burns, so people start to question the durability of Nate Landwehr. However, I still believe the guy has a good chin. I just think that was a perfectly placed strike by Herbert Burns with a ton of power behind it as well, something that we know that Herbert Burns definitely carries. Darren Elkins, that fight was an absolute war. Darren Elkins picked up the first round. The second round definitely went to Nate, but that third round was heavily contested. If you guys go back to, or even go over to MMA decisions, you guys will see that 65% of the voters there actually had Darren Elkins winning that third round. However, every single judge had it unanimously for Nate Landwehr 29-28. But I kind of see that too. But Darren Elkins was landing some good shots in that third round, snapping Nate Landwehr's head back, and he had some good success in the first round with his hands and even getting Nate down. Now, Nate did a good job of getting back to his feet, but I think if he deals with a similar type of approach from Movsar Evloev, he's going to be in a bunch of trouble. I think that Movsar will be a little bit better with getting to the punch a little bit quicker, more crisp with his shots. His leg kicks are solid as well too. But I think his ability to mix his whole MMA game together is really going to give Nate Landwehr trouble. I think he'll be able to get takedowns with relative ease. I think he'll be able to keep Nate down for extended periods of time. But even if this fight does take place on the feet, I think he'll be a little bit more active, landing the cleaner, crisper shots, kind of stopping the forward movement of Nate. Nate is a bit cautious himself at times with his striking game too, looking for the right times to kind of explode and move forward. I'd say the best shot that I've seen him land, at least in his last fight against Darren Elkins, was that beautiful elbow that just split open Darren Elkins, and he was celebrating it too right after the fact. You know, he's just going whoa and pointing over at Dana and calling Dana's name in the middle of the fight. Fucking absolute nutcase this guy is, but I love watching it, and I'm sure Dana loves watching him too. So I'm hoping that we get to see him stick around even after taking an L here, because I do think that Movsar will still go out there and get this done. Now I don't think that he'll get the finish because I don't think he has the power that Burns does, but he is getting better on a fight to fight basis. So if he does go out there and knock out Nate Landwehr, I wouldn't be completely surprised, because you gotta expect progression from a fighter on a fight to fight basis. Nate Landwehr 32, closer to the best we'll ever see him, whereas Movsar Evloev at 26, he's only getting better from a fight to fight basis. But I would rather go with Movsar to win by decision. I know that prop is minus 135, which makes some sense here, but I think he does, he will do a much better job of mixing in his MMA game to kind of keep Nate guessing. And, if you're having close fights with Darren Elkins, I think that Movsar Evloev will definitely be able to blow him out of the water here. And, yeah, I'm not one to really do that whole MMA math type of thing, but that's just really not a good look for your last fight to be that close, and a bunch of people actually even scoring it the opposite way too. Not a good look at all. I think Movsar definitely wins this fight clearly, maybe a 30-27, but that's definitely the way that I'm going to be going. So once again, I'll go with Movsar Evloev to win this fight via decision. Roman Dolidze versus John Allan. We got minus 160 on Roman and plus 140 on John Allan. Since this line is open, it's pretty much stuck around the same line. The fight doesn't go to decision as a minus 160. Opened up at minus 245. Yeah, this is a fun fight. So let's start off with John Allan first. He was scheduled to fight at Herman back in September. Unfortunately, he had to pull out. But he did he won a decision victory against Mike Rodriguez July of 2019. So it's been over a year and a half, or close to a year and a half, since the last time we've seen him. That fight did eventually get changed to a no contest, as Allan did eventually pop for some sort of supplement or PEDs or whatever the fuck it was. But let's talk about his style, though. He seems to be a fighter that likes to pretty much take all aspects of MMA into consideration. Solid kicks, solid striking, good hands, and a good fight IQ to be able to take fights to the ground if that's what he needs to do, or if that's what he needs to do, just like he did against Mike Rodriguez last time around. The Alexandre Silva fight, which was his fight after the Contender Series, where he got choked out by Vinicius Moreira on the Brazilian Contender Series, I should say. That was August of 2018. But he did take a fight in Future FC 6 where he knocked out a prospect, it seemed, in Alexandre Silva, who was 6-0 at the time. Now he's 6-2, but he did knock him out in the second round, and that was a fight where it took a little bit of time for his hands to get going, but once they started getting going and started his kicks going too, he seemed to be more of an opportunistic striker more than anything else, and it paid off for him. Like, he was waiting for his openings, he was hurting Alexandre Silva's legs, his calves, and then eventually started getting his punches together, and then put together a beautiful combination to eventually put out Silva in that second round. Beautiful performance there. Then he comes in as a pretty heavy underdog against Mike Rodriguez, as a lot of people thought that Rodriguez was going to be able to keep this fight on the feet and pretty much either put out John Allan or at least outstrike him. However, John Allan had completely different plans. He goes out there, puts together a solid game plan, starting off with leg kicks and then taking the fight to the ground whenever he wanted. Mike Rodriguez had a very, very tough time in terms of getting back to his feet, and that's what really caused him to lose that fight, and John Allan to come out with a decision victory there. Obviously now a no contest, so he's still technically winless in the UFC, and he hopes to right that ship here against Roman Dolidze Dolidze, I should say, who's a very, very tough out. So let's talk about Dolidze, who last time around in July knocked out Khadis Ibragimov with a beautifully placed knee. It actually, it looked like it was supposed to be a kick, but the brunt of that impact was actually on the chin of Khadis Ibragimov, courtesy of the knee. And then he followed up with a couple ground and pound shots there, which, permanently put away Khadis in that fight. There was a lengthy layoff for Roman before his UFC debut. He was scheduled to fight Gadzimir Antigulov, Vinicius Mojera, and even Khadis Ibragimov roughly a month before they actually ended up fighting. So his last fight before the UFC was December of 2018. So he was coming up on just over a year and a half layoff, but it didn't seem to bug him at all against Khadis in that fight. Now, if you guys go back and listen to my breakdown of Roman in that fight leading up to the Khadis fight, I did pick him to win, but I was a little bit, put off, not put off. I was a little bit distracted by his last couple fights, thinking that this guy was just a slugger. You know what I mean? From what I saw in his regional fights, he liked to go out there and wait for his shots to actually go out there and throw big bombs, good counters, good spinning back fists, just as he knocked out the last guy he did before coming to the UFC. But he seemed like a brawler, a slugger, a guy that wants to go to the middle of the cage and try to just knock you out, try to have the bigger balls pretty much. But I dug into him a little bit deeper this time around. It turns out the guy's not too shabby when it comes to the grappling realm either. He fought in something called the grappling championships. It was like combat championships or something like that. And I believe he went undefeated and even came up as the champion before that went, that league went defunct. But now he did get into MMA in 2016, and he's gone on a 7-0 run at this point in time. The majority of his fights in the beginning of his career, his first 3 fights he won by first round sub, the longest of those being 1 minute and 21 seconds. And I thought that was just more so him going out there and fighting guys that just didn't really deserve to be in there. Then he goes out his next 3 fights and knocks everybody out. So those are the fights that I really focused on more so when I was looking into that Khadis fight. And man, he's a high level jiu-jitsu guy. He's a brown belt in the gi. Yeah, he has a lot to offer on the ground. That's where I thought coming into this fight with John Allan, that's where Allan might be able to have an advantage is, okay, he might be a little bit more higher output and he could go to the takedowns and get this fight to the ground if he really wanted to, but I'm not sure if he really wants to take it there. You know what I mean? I think Dolidze has a solid jiu-jitsu off of his back. Even when Khadis was able to kind of like trip Roman there, Roman was like inviting him to come into the jiu-jitsu room, and Khadis is like, nah, I'm good, dude. Let's just keep us on the feet so you can eventually knock me out closer to the ending of the round. But I like him here against John Allan. I gotta say, his low output is a little bit concerning, but it seems to be, a dick swinging contest whenever he goes out there and fights. And I expect it to be the same here with John Allan. It seems like Roman is more of a counter striker, so I don't think the output would be too much of an issue here, given that John Allan is a little bit more active, likes to throw more shots and end with leg kicks. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if maybe Roman catches a kick, tries to take this to the ground and start to implement his jiu-jitsu, as we've seen John Allan tapped in the past to Vinicius Mojera. Not 100% sure if Dolidze and Mojera were to go at it, who would really come out on the winning end when it comes to the jiu-jitsu. But I don't know if John Allan really wants the ground with Dolidze. And now if you're telling me Dolidze throws those bungalows and doesn't really care about takedowns coming his way because he has a high-level jiu-jitsu background, I start to like this guy a little bit more. You know what I mean? I thought initially that there was going to be some value on John Allan here, but I don't mind that minus 160 on Roman. I think he has a solid shot of either knocking out or submitting John Allan here. I think he's very, very live for one of those. And I'd be interested to see what the submission prop looks like for Dolidze here. From last weekend, we had Miguel Baeza via submission at plus 900, but I think that had a lot to do with him not having a submission victory on his record to date. Dolidze has 3, so that's just about half of his wins, just under half of his wins have come by submission, so maybe the bookmakers are a little bit more privy to his jiu-jitsu background. But Baeza, black belt, yet they continuously overlooked it, thinking that he wasn't going to be able to snatch it up. But here against with Dolidze and Allan, I expected it to take place on the feet. I expect Dolidze to land the bigger shots. And another positive for Dolidze, in my opinion. So in that fight against Khadis, they had said that he opened up his own gym because he wasn't the most happy with the training that he was getting. So that was going well for him over in Ukraine. But in August, if you guys look at his IG, in August he said he actually moved everything down to Vegas. Now I'm not sure what's going on with his gym back home in Ukraine, but since August, the end of August, he's been training at Extreme Couture, getting some good reads, getting some solid time in with other high level, sparring partners and even UFC fighters as well. So I think that's a good move for him to come over here and get more looks than he probably would have over there in Ukraine. So he's making the changes that are necessary. He's doing what he needs to improve his game, and my potential for this guy is starting to grow a little bit higher than it originally had. So I'll go at Roman Dolidze to win this fight, probably by KO or sub. I'm just not sure which one exactly, but I think he has a high ceiling for sure. I think people are going to be intimidated by his striking, the power that he has, and then they're going to be a little bit put off in terms of the jiu-jitsu that's going to be coming their way too. So yeah, I think this kid's not this kid. He's how old is he? Let me just get that out of the way. He's 32 years old, so he's got to get it going now. You know what I mean? He's in his prime, at least age-wise. Doesn't have a lot of fight miles on him too, so I'm sure his durability is there. But yeah, he's really got to get it going now. And luckily for him, like heavyweight, not the most booming division at the time. You know what I mean? We do have our top 5 guys that are all trying to battle it out right now, but he could find himself within that top 10 probably by middle of next year. If he's able to start stringing some wins together. So I'll go with Roman Dolidze, first or second round KO or submission, but I really like this guy. Montana De La Rosa versus Taila Santos. We got minus 210 on Taila Santos, and we got plus 175 for the short notice Montana De La Rosa. So I say short notice because Taila Santos was scheduled to fight Marina Moroz. Moroz pulls out, not 100% sure exactly why, but in steps Montana De La Rosa quickly, relatively quickly after her loss to Viviane Araujo back in September. So she's taken exactly 3 months off, and now she's right back into this, taking the fight on roughly about a week and a half notice. I'm not sure how much that's going to play into this. According to her IG, it seemed like she was, putting in the work. She was getting, she was doing what she needed to do to stay in shape. Obviously, that makes sense as to, her taking this fight. It is at flyweight, which is what it was. The Santos fight was scheduled for. Before obviously this whole change here, but let's get into the actual to the fight here. So with Taila Santos, we saw her come up flat against Mara Romero Barella, where she lost a split decision, where she pretty much got 1 taken down and then 2 kind of just controlled up against the cage. She did have a strong third round, but it was just too little, too late, and Barella did end up getting the decision victory there. Then afterwards, we did see, I think, the actual Taila Santos against Molly McCann, and I was kind of surprised that a lot of people were duped into betting Molly in that spot. I believe I did end up betting on Taila Santos. I did get her around that plus 150-ish range. Very, very happy to hit that spot. I was very, very surprised at the amount of love that Molly was getting. A lot of recency bias baked into a lot of these lines, in my opinion, and it's affecting a lot of people too. Like, you can't just look at their last performance. You got to, dial it back a little bit further. You got to take X factors into consideration. I think that there was a lot going into Taila Santos against Barella. Now here against Molly McCann, she did a very good job of, staying on the feet, battering Molly McCann from the outside, and even taking the fight to the ground if she needed to, and clinching up and showing that she's the much stronger fighter than Molly McCann. So great performance from Taila Santos last time around. I think a lot of people going into that Barella fight were expecting her to go out there and have a similar performance as she did in the Contender Series when she beat Estefany Almeida in a fight where she had her hurt on multiple occasions, but just wasn't able to put her away. Now with this De La Rosa fight, it's interesting because you guys know me. I've bet on De La Rosa a couple times in the past, and she's won for me, she's lost for me, and I keep saying, okay, this is the last time I'm going to bet on her. considering that she didn't have that great of a performance against Viviane Araújo. But the difference here between Araújo and Santos is I believe that Araújo is just a little bit more physical and has a little bit more fast twitch muscle, and obviously physically looks in much, much better shape than Taila Santos. Not taking anything away from Santos, but Araújo is just sculpted out of granite, it looks like. But any time that there was an instance where De La Rosa kind of pinned her up against the cage or even tried going for any type of takedown, we did not see Araújo, stand still for 1 second, not even a millisecond. She was, shrimping every single time. She was, moving from side to side, trying to get out of these positions, getting rid of the body locks. She was very, very strong in those positions, and that's what allowed her to really keep the fight at distance and really get her shots off and really make De La Rosa kind of hurt from the outside. We saw De La Rosa kind of accept the fact that she wasn't able to get this fight to the ground, and we saw her kind of bite down on her mouthpiece a little bit more and start to throw more punches, which will lead a lot of people to believe that she's believing in her striking a little bit more. I've heard that take from a couple of different people at this point, but I don't really believe that. I think it's more so it's De La Rosa accepting the fact that she wasn't getting that fight to the ground. Araújo, very, very strong, a ton of fast twitch muscle. The lack of settling up against the cage really allowed her to get out of those bad positions. And she had the gas tank to do it. Now, what Taila Santos, I'm seeing kind of the opposite. Like, she's willing to engage in these clinch battles, and she's willing to engage in, these grappling exchanges. And I think that's where it might go wrong for her. We did see Barella obviously have some success, and I think De La Rosa is definitely the best grappler she's had to deal with up until this point. I don't think Molly McCann really has much on De La Rosa when it comes to the grappling. Molly had a little bit of a successful run, upsetting a couple fighters, and everybody thinking that she's like a D1 wrestler at this point in time, and thinking that she was going to get Taila Santos down time and time again. Like, she just kept going for a single leg and not really the most power or conviction behind it either, which really ended up kind of falling back on her, whereas Taila Santos was able to like reverse those positions, eventually get her down and do some good damage from on top. I think we'll see De La Rosa successful in those situations. I think if she's able to successfully push Santos up against the cage, she will get those takedowns, and she will be able to kind of push Taila up against the cage and really wear on her there. Montella De Rosa 5'7", 68-inch reach. Taila Santos 5'6", 66-inch reach, 68-inch reach. We did see Molly McCann deal with the height advantage and the size advantage of Taila Santos, which is definitely in her favor. I don't think that's going to be the thing here. De La Rosa has a wrestling background from wrestling in high school and college, I believe, up until the point that she ended up having a kid. But I think she's going to be the toughest grappler that Santos has faced. And if we saw Mara go out there and have some success, albeit I believe there were some conditions going into that fight for Taila, which is why she didn't really perform to the best of her ability. But I don't think that Santos has the type of striking that Araújo has. Like, don't get me wrong, Taila's striking is great. I think it's good. I think it's definitely passable in this division, but I don't think it's to the point where it's going to kind of demoralize De La Rosa from pushing this fight up against the cage, getting her hands on Taila, and possibly dragging this fight to the ground. I think it's the willingness of Taila to engage in those clinch situations and not really, just try to shrimp her way out of those positions like she did against Molly McCann or even Barella. I think that's where it's going to kind of get a little bit harder for De La Rosa. Now, we did see something come out from James Lynch earlier today, saying that we didn't see De La Rosa get to go over to Team Elevation like she did before her last camp and get in some time there. But you got to take into consideration that this is somewhat short notice. So how would she have known to go out there? Like, it costs money to do that. I believe she lives in New Mexico with obviously Mark De La Rosa, her husband, and her kid. But it costs money to go out to Denver and rent a place and pay for the training and all that type of stuff. So I think that's a little bit of a concern. And obviously the short notice, like what really is she going to get out of going to Team Elevation for like 3 or 4 days and then having to fly to Vegas from there and quarantining and doing all that type of shit. So yeah, she is taking some things from I'm trying to remember Elliot Marshall. She's taking notes and lessons from him through Zoom, and I don't think that's something that people should look too hard into. Again, it's a short notice fight, but I think the talents and the skills that De La Rosa brings into this fight against Santos definitely makes her a live underdog at that plus 175 range. You can get her at plus 180 at a couple spots too. So I do like her at that price. I don't mind that at all. I think this is a solid spot for her. Like going into this, I thought I was going to be backing Santos, but once you really start to break down the tape and see those situations that De La Rosa could possibly get Santos into, and seeing how Santos reacts in those situations, I lead De La Rosa. Now we might see Santos come out here and show what Viviane Araujo did, which is, anytime the clinch or anything was initiated, she just absolutely gets the hell out of dodge. You know what I mean? She does everything in her power to just get out of those situations and then land a couple good strikes on De La Rosa to continue to demoralize her. But I just don't see it. Like, I feel like if we were going to see it, we would have seen it in the Molly McCann fight, but she trusted in herself and she did. She was successful in reversing positions and getting Molly down, but I think she's going to have a harder time doing that against, in my opinion, the best grappler that she's faced to date in Montana De La Rosa. So I'm going with De La Rosa. I think she has a solid shot at getting this fight down repeatedly, having some good success from on top, and good taking home a decision victory. So I'll go with Montana to win this fight by decision. I think she's a very, very live underdog here at plus 175, plus 180, possibly even a better line if closer to fight week. I'm not 100% sure yet. We're recording this on the Thursday of the fight week prior to the current fight week. So yeah, I'll go with Montana to win this fight via decision. Ovince St. Preux versus Jamahal Hill. We got minus 165 on the up-and-comer Jamahal Hill and plus 145 on the vet OSP. Let's start off with OSP, and let's start off with the cash that I got last time around when he went out there and knocked out Alonzo Menafield 4 minutes into that second round. Beautiful performance by him in terms of staying away from the power shots of the devastator Alonzo Menafield, who just likes to go out there and just knock people's heads off. And a lot of people were in agreement that OSP still has a suspect chin, and Menafield would be able to, will be prime in terms of finding that chin and putting him out. He was a plus 120 dog. I believe that's roughly around the price that I got him at, and I was more than happy to hit that bet. He did a good job of using his kicks to maintain the distance and slowly suck away the cardio of Alonzo Menafield as he continued to throw at air. And then eventually he started getting his punches into the game. As soon as Alonzo's punches started to, kind of decline in the power, and we saw Menafield, really start to suck wind. There was a moment in time where we saw OSP land 15 to 16 consecutive strikes without Alonzo Menafield even attempting one. We saw OSP on his back foot for pretty much the entire fight, but he did a really good job from fighting from that stance as he's knocked out a bunch of guys kind of moving backwards. Alonzo Menafield and even Shogun Hua, if you guys remember that one from several years ago. So I like what we see from OSP, but I do think that his age is going to start catching up to him. He's 37 years old, which is crazy. But he has fought for a title in the past. He's made it to the pinnacle of the sport, but he's slowly starting to fade away. And he's doing a good job of kind of, weeding out the prospects that are on the up and up. Alonzo Menafield obviously being one of them. And now Jamahal Hill is somebody that he's looking to turn away as well. So you guys if you guys have been following me for a while, you guys know that I haven't really been the biggest Jamahal Hill fan. I believe I've faded him in both of his last two fights, as I just wasn't the biggest fan of, his chin high in the air type of style, kind of throwing a little bit wild at times. But I gotta say, the kid is slowly starting to win me over. And I feel like this is almost a nightmare matchup for OSP, because this is a completely different style than what he saw against Alonzo Menafield. We know Menafield, he likes to land that big stride. He mainly does the majority of his damage with his hands, with his hooks, with his overhand right, whereas Jamahal Hill is a little bit more diverse and has a lot more variety with the type of strikes that he likes to throw, from knees to kicks to, similar kicks to what OSP throws. And he's a big dude himself too. 6'4", 79-inch reach, and we know that OSP is 6'3" with the 80-inch reach. Wow, he's actually an inch taller than OSP as well too, so that should definitely play into this fight. I think when OSP is the one kind of being hunted by a fighter that is able to throw a variety of strikes the way that Jamahal Hill is, I think it kind of starts to break him, and that cardio really starts to fuck with him. And I think that's what we're going to see here with Jamahal Hill, as he'll probably be the one with the moving forward, landing the big shots, landing the variety of shots too. My concern here is if this fight does end up getting to the ground. I feel like OSP will have a slight advantage there, but I'm not 100% sure where Jamahal Hill truly is with his jiu-jitsu and where his ground game is at. I feel like he's improving on a fight-to-fight basis, and he's still quite young. He's 29 years old, at least young in his fight years. He's only 8-0. He's had 8 fights. He turned pro in 2017, and within 3 years, just over 3 years, he's managed to accrue an 8-0 record, which is very, very impressive. He has a ton of finishes, or a handful of finishes on his record too, but I feel like his style of kind of attacking the way that he does will definitely help him out in this fight against OSP. Again, I feel like his chin-up style is still going to be a bit of concern. And again, OSP does very well in terms of fighting off of his back foot. So Hill's going to have to be very, very tuned in and making sure that he kind of sees the counters that are coming his way from OSP. I think if he's able to, start out on the front foot and really start pushing the pace, not really pushing the pace, but at least pushing the fight to OSP from the get-go, he should be able to start accumulating enough damage to really get OSP to start sucking some wind and, really taking the pop off of his shots too. I hope that we see Hill manage to keep this fight on the feet, as I feel like that's where he'll be strongest. And I could absolutely see Hill absolutely get a finish here over OSP as well. I think he can hurt him to the body, just as he did Klitz and Abreu. The kid's growing on me. And I never thought I'd really say that, but he's showing time and time again that he can show up. He can avoid the big strikes of his opponents. He can get away with having his chin up in the air. But him slightly being bigger than OSP here brings a very interesting aspect, as OSP is normally the bigger guy going into his fights. I think the last fight he was a smaller guy was the Ben Rothwell fight, and we saw him lose that via split decision. Dominic Reyes, I believe, is bigger than him, and he lost that fight. Not often do you see him going out there and beating guys bigger than him. So that's something to keep in mind here. So, yeah, I do like Jamahal Hill. I think he gets it done probably first or second round. I could see him definitely putting it on OSP and getting that dub. And I don't mind him at that minus 165 range. I think the line is slowly getting better on him too. It is getting better on him. He opened at minus 195. Now we're seeing some love come back on OSP, and I think this might be the spot to jump off the OSP train. It was great casting on him against Alonzo Benefield, was a little bit more of a one-dimensional striker, whereas Jamahal Hill is going to bring a lot more to the game that could potentially, stunt the return or the resurgence of OSP. So I'm going with Jamahal Hill. I think he gets it done first or second round. I'm starting to like this kid. He's winning me over, so congrats, Jamahal Hill. You've won a fan over your last couple performances. So hopefully he can go out there, get the job done against this vet, and add a very, very good name to his record. So this should definitely really help him in his career, the trajectory of his career, and possibly put him in that top 10 discussion of the light heavyweight realm. So once again, I'll go with Jamahal Hill to win this fight via first or second round KO. Time for the main event. We got Jack the Joker Hermansson versus Marvin Vettori. And the lines just recently opened up. We got minus 135 for Vettori and plus 105 for Jack Hermansson. And Hermansson's had to deal with a couple pullouts at this point in time. And it's unfortunate due to, it being such a big stage, having the main event slot here, and trying to build off that Kelvin Gastelum win from back in July. Now, he was originally scheduled to fight Darren Till. That fight would have been great for him to at least, get another name under his belt. Then in steps Kevin Holland, who, in my opinion, kind of deserved the push. He got robbed a bunch of times this year in terms of having a top name opponent or a top ranked opponent, and them pulling out and him having to take short notice opponents that he was able to go style on pretty quickly. And now in steps Marvin Vettori, who, in my opinion, just like Kevin Holland, deserves a bit of a push as well too. So good for him for being able to take this fight, his first headlining fight, and a stiff test here against Jack Hermansson. And I find the odds to be a little bit weird that people seem to be so heavily in favor of Marvin Vettori here. So let's start off with Jack Hermansson as to why I believe he should be the favorite. So I like his style in terms of his wrestling, heavy style, Greco-Roman background, I believe it is. Very strong and weird frame for this division too. He's 6'1" with a 77.5-inch reach. Marvin Vettori is 6 foot with a 74-inch reach. But the Joker is just so lanky and awkward, and he has this weird strength about him where he's not like the most ripped or shredded guy, kind of like Marvin Vettori is, but he has this weird like lanky strength, this lanky muscle. You know what I mean? So he's able to get these trips and get these takedowns and just be heavy from on top. Landing good shots from on top or searching for submissions. And even on the feet, he's not horrible. You know what I mean? He doesn't really throw in combinations too often. Most of his shots are kind of unorthodox strikes, whether they're spinning back kicks or just a teep to the front leg or something like that. He likes to be a little bit unorthodox with his approach. I think what he's looking more often than not is for the takedown. Like, I think that he's looking for a way to continuously keep moving, keep his opponent guessing, and then when they're least expecting, kind of close that distance and go for a double leg or even a trip or even a throw of some sort. The guy's very well rounded, in my opinion. A lot of people are shitting on him as of late. I'm not 100% certain as to why. He did. So he's lost 3 times in the UFC now. The first time to Cesar Ferreira way back in November of 2016. Then Thiago Santos, where he got put out right at the end of the round. That was that was October of 2017. And then most recently, he got knocked out by Jared Cannonier in September of 2019. He did eventually come back and obviously beat Kelvin Gastelum just about 10 months after that. He was scheduled to fight Chris Weidman in May, but obviously that got pushed back due to COVID, but that would have probably been an easy win for him to get as well. The Kelvin Gastelum fight was interesting because it only lasted 1 minute and 18 seconds. We didn't see too much in terms of what Hermansson had, just as he's normally able to go out there and show. He went for I believe it was a body lock takedown, and Gastelum did a really good job of kind of reversing it with a lateral drop. He was eventually able to get the top position, but Jack did a good job of continuously scrambling from the bottom, attacking heel hooks and leg locks, and eventually did get the heel hook on Kelvin Gastelum, who just didn't seem that urgent, which was very, very weird. It seemed like he was kind of content in thinking that no way that this guy's going to catch me with a heel hook, and before you know it, Hermansson has this weird strength where he's just able to generate this torque, and that really threw off Kelvin Gastelum in that situation. So very unfortunate loss for Kelvin Gastelum there, but another confidence booster for Jack Hermansson here, especially going into this fight against Vettori, who seems to be streaking himself as well. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. The fight that he did end up losing was to Israel Adesanya before that, but since then he's beaten Cesar Ferreira, which was July of 2019, beat him by decision. Then he beats Andrew Sanchez by decision in October, roughly about 3 months later, and then he just finished Carl Roberson in June of this year. That one had a ton of heat behind it due to the constant pullouts from Carl Roberson's part, and then obviously a bunch of other unfortunate issues that Roberson had to deal with there. But we saw decent striking from Vettori, and then eventually he wanted to take the fight to the ground where he felt like he had a better chance of getting it done. Roberson got close to locking up a submission there, but Vettori did a good job of spinning out, and he showed some good dominance on the ground, eventually capturing that rear naked choke, which was a really good submission for him to capture in that spot. But this is a weird one against Jack Hermansson. Let me just take a quick sip of water because my throat is fucking with me real bad right now. All right, that was weird. Either way, okay. So the way these guys match up, I feel like the striking style of Hermansson, even though he doesn't really throw in combinations, which is kind of Vettori's, his strength or his advantage that he has here. I think he's going to have the advantage on the feet, landing the more output and just throwing a little bit more variety of combinations. Whereas Jack Hermansson is going to try to be a little bit more unorthodox with his approach. But I truly think that his way to get this, to get his hand raised in this fight, is going to be by taking this fight to the ground. I think we have seen Vettori taken down before. He's done a good job of getting back to his feet, but I feel like Hermansson has a really good top pressure and top game that he should be able to keep Vettori down for extended periods of time and do some solid work from on top. This is the first time Vettori is going to be scheduled to fight for 5 rounds, and I feel like that's an advantage for Jack Hermansson, who, if you guys remember, he took that fight against Jacare Souza on relatively short notice. Souza was supposed to fight Yoel Romero that night. In steps Jack Hermansson, again, on relatively short notice. He did beat David Branch just about a month before that, just under a month before that, and he steps in to fight Jacare Souza in a 5-round fight and beats him in a 5-round fight too, very decisively as well. Continuously taking Souza down, staying out of submissions, but landing good work from on top, and that's the kind of approach I think he'll take here against Vettori. Now, I think he'll be more successful the later this fight goes. So obviously it's going to be a little bit more difficult to, 1, get Vettori down early, and 2, keep him down, as I feel like Vettori does a good job of getting back to his feet. But again, this is the first time he's dealing with somebody that has the type of top pressure, ground and pound that Jack Hermansson does. And that should bring a very interesting factor or caveat to this fight. I just like Jack here. I'm not sure what it is. Now, I'm not confident to the extent of actually wanting to go out there and bet him. But if the line did continue to widen and we possibly got Jack Hermansson around plus 150 or so, that would make me a little bit more interested here. I'm not 100% certain on or sold on the fact that Hermansson would get the finish here either. So maybe if you want to take the poke on Hermansson to win by decision, which is plus 525. Ooh, that is a little absurd in my opinion. That might be worth a little bit of a poke, as I believe that's his way to win this. Or him to win inside the distance is plus 160, but Vettori is durable for sure. That's something that we've seen in pretty much all of his fights. Even Adesanya just picking him apart from the outside, wasn't able to get him out of there. Antonio Carlos Jr. not able to get him out of there either. And then his only other loss was against a guy named Bill Beaumont, who wasn't able to get him out of there either. So, I think it's going to come down to the takedowns for Hermansson. Possible sub game as well, too, from Hermansson. But it depends on how long the takedown defense of Vettori truly holds up and if he's able to get Hermansson out of there with punches. Now, I'm not sold that we'll see Vettori actually get a KO here. He hasn't really knocked out anybody since his second last fight before coming to the UFC, which was against Jack Mason. Finished him with a knee, but not a notorious finisher as Vettori. So I'm intrigued to see how he deals with 25 minutes, especially taking this fight on short notice. That's an issue here. Now, Hermansson obviously took that fight against Jacare on short notice and then was able to go all 25 minutes. Is Vettori going to be able to do the same? I don't know. He should be able to, but I think that Hermansson's going to have the edge there. So I'm going with Hermansson here to win by decision. I think he'll be successful in getting this fight to the ground, doing good work from on top. I just don't think that Vettori's really faced anybody that can give him that type of trouble with that type of ground and pound and that type of strength that Jack Hermansson has. And I think a lot of people are overlooking Hermansson in this situation due to the seemingly meteoric rise and love of Vettori since his fight with Andrew Sanchez. Everybody seems to be all over this guy. And obviously he goes out there and beats the 2 guys that he's supposed to. But I got to say, this is his toughest opponent to date since the Israel Adesanya fight. So I think people need to pump their brakes a bit on Vettori. So once again, I'll go with Jack Hermansson to win this fight with, ground and pound, with his wrestling. But I ultimately think that he takes home a decision victory. I'll go with Jack Hermansson via decision. And those are the breakdowns. I appreciate you guys checking out the podcast. As always, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe. Make sure you hit the like. Drop a comment regarding if you disagree with any of my picks. I'd be happy to debate you guys with them. I'll see you guys on Thursday for the Propping You Up stream, 8 p.m. Eastern. Me and Cody Saftik will go through all the best props for every single fight on the card. And then Friday, we do the final weigh-in stream on the odds channel. I'll see you guys at 9 p.m. Eastern on that day. And yeah, hit up the Patreon. Please hit up the Patreon. I already got my Lock of the Night play ready to go. I'm recording this on Sunday night, dropping the podcast every Monday morning for you guys, or as close to Monday morning as I can get. But yeah, I'll see you guys then. Thanks for watching the episode. Hit like, hit subscribe, do all that shit. I'll see you guys next week for the next episode. Good luck on your best this weekend. And yeah, see you guys Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for the fight day stream. I don't want to end this episode, if you guys can tell. But either way, good luck on your best this weekend. I'll see you guys next time.